My mother dated the man who ruined my life and kept it secret for 8 years. I found out on a Tuesday, which somehow made it worse. Like betrayal had chosen a weekday, casually, without ceremony. No dramatic reveal, no thunderstorm outside the window, no ominous music playing. Just me, standing in her kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil, scrolling through her tablet because mine was dead. I shouldn't have looked at the photos. I know that. But when you see your mom's tablet wide open, and you're bored and tired and trying not to think about the life you just lost, you tap. You swipe. And sometimes, you find things you can't unsee. There they were. At a vineyard. Laughing. Arms around each other. She wore a sun hat. He wore my past like it never meant a thing. Trevor Keane. That name probably means nothing to you. But to me, it's the sound of a door slamming shut. He was my boss, back when I thought my life had a trajectory. Back when I believed in corporate ladders and work ethic and playing the long game. Trevor was the kind of man who smiled like he'd already won the argument. Tall, polished, perfect hair, the kind of handshake that squeezed too long. He ran a consulting firm, one of those startups that hires brilliant young people and burns them out for profit. I was 27, fresh out of grad school, high off ambition and caffeine. I'd landed a job with his company after 6 rounds of interviews. They said I was a cultural fit. I didn't know that meant someone who'd say yes to everything and question nothing. The first year was a blur of late nights, coffee-stained dress shirts, and group chats that pinged at 2 a.m. Trevor loved my ideas. Said I had vision. He even mentioned grooming me for a leadership track. By the second year, I was managing a small team, getting noticed, winning contracts. I thought I was on the fast lane. Then came the deal. The Hastings Project? A government contract worth millions. High stakes, high profile. I was the one who streamlined the proposal, nailed the pitch, led the team. And then Trevor put his name on it. Not metaphorically. Literally. He submitted the final deck under his name alone. When the deal closed, the bonus went to him. The promotion? To his protege, some Ivy League legacy with a LinkedIn profile that read like a boarding school brochure. I confronted him. I was calm at first. I asked why my name wasn't on anything. He smiled and said, "That's how this game works. Look. You learn, you grow, and you keep your head down until it's your turn." I called him a thief. He called me ungrateful. 2 weeks later, I was out. Officially, it was downsizing. Privately, I knew I'd been blacklisted. The references dried up. My interviews vanished. Every door I knocked on suddenly had a lock I couldn't pick. I found out later he'd made a few discreet calls. Said I was volatile, difficult to manage, possibly unstable. My career flatlined. I spent a year delivering packages for a startup that folded in 6 months. Another year bartending at a place that played techno at 2 p.m. My confidence eroded. I stopped answering calls. I ghosted old friends. I moved back home. To her house. My mom, Teresa. The strongest woman I know. The one who raised me alone after Dad skipped out when I was 9. The one who worked double shifts as a nurse so I could go to college. The woman who taught me to hold my head high, even when it was easier to bow. And she was dating him? I stared at the photo like it was a crime scene. My mother. My boss. My betrayer. In the next photo, they were kissing. My stomach turned. I closed the tablet. My hands were shaking. The kettle screamed, shrill and boiling, like it was in on the secret. I didn't hear her come in. "Tea okay?" she asked casually, setting down her purse. She looked tired. Kind. Like always. I nodded. My mouth was dry. "Actually," I said, "can we talk?" She looked at me, puzzled, maybe a little wary. "Of course, hon. What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" I could have screamed. But I didn't. I smiled like a man about to set his life on fire. And I said, "How long have you been sleeping with Trevor Keane?" For a second, she didn't react. Like the words hadn't registered. Then she blinked slowly, like her brain was buffering, and tilted her head. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," I replied, voice low. "Trevor. The man who tanked my career. The man who stole everything I worked for. The man who blacklisted me." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. "Luke, Don't lie," I said. "I saw the pictures." That landed. Her whole body went still. She took a step back, then another, until she was leaning against the counter. The color drained from her face. "You went through my things?" "It was open," I snapped. "Your tablet. On the table." I wasn't snooping. But I sure as hell wasn't going to scroll past pictures of you cuddling up to him. She closed her eyes. Breathe deep. It's complicated. No, Mom. It's really not. I paced, trying to keep from yelling. You knew what he did to me. You were there when I came home broken. When I couldn't get out of bed. When I didn't know how I was going to pay rent. You knew. And you dated him anyway. Her voice came out shaky. I didn't know it was him. Not at first. I stopped pacing. What? She rubbed her temples. I met him at a fundraiser. For the hospital. He didn't introduce himself with his company name. Just said he did consulting. We talked for weeks before I even connected the dots. And when you did connect the dots? She hesitated. It had been months. And by then, Luke, it wasn't just casual. I didn't know how to tell you. You were already in a dark place. Oh, so you lied by omission? For 8 years. It wasn't like that. No. I laughed bitterly. Because from where I'm standing, it sure looks like you picked the man who wrecked your son's life and built a relationship behind his back. She stepped forward, her eyes pleading now. Luke, I didn't choose him over you. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. You did. The kitchen went quiet. Even the kettle had stopped hissing. Just two people in a silent standoff, the truth hanging between us like poison in the air. She looked down. I didn't think it would last. But it did. She nodded. How long, exactly? Almost 8 years. My chest caved in. 8 years, and you never thought to mention it? I wanted to. So many times. But you were hurting. And then we just settled into a rhythm. I thought it would blow over. Blow over? I repeated, incredulous. You thought my trauma would just expire? She didn't answer. I turned, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. Jesus, Mom. Do you have any idea what that man did to me? I do, she whispered. I do, look. And I hated him for it. I hated myself for being with him. But he wasn't that person with me. He was kind. He was supportive. He... Spare me, I snapped. I'm not here to hear how great he is in a sweater vest. She flinched. And for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But it passed. Because the weight in my chest was heavier. Years of silence. Years of wondering why I never got back on my feet. Of questioning my worth, my talent, my sanity, while she sat across from me at dinner and said nothing. I need air, I said abruptly, grabbing my coat. Luke, wait. But I was already out the door. Into the cold. Into the dark. Into the kind of quiet that buzzes with static. 8 years. 8 years of lies. And the worst part? It wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that maybe I'd never really known the woman who raised me at all. I walked for 2 hours. Not because I had somewhere to go, but because I didn't. Because if I stopped moving, I'd fall apart. The streets were dim, the sky an overcast bruise. I passed shuttered stores and flickering street lamps, barely noticing anything except the roar in my head. How do you process something like that? Your mother. The one person you trusted without question. The one who sat beside you through every loss, who held your hand during your lowest moment, the moment he caused, and never said a word. She'd been in bed with the enemy. Literally. I found myself outside an old diner. The kind with cracked booths and syrup that never fully leaves the table. I stepped inside, more ghost than man. The waitress gave me a look, half concern, half curiosity, and I slid into the back booth without a word. Coffee. No cream. Just something to hold. As I sat there, staring into that cup, I tried to unravel it. Maybe there was a version of events where it wasn't betrayal. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she didn't want to ruin what little I had left. Maybe she thought she was protecting me. But those were excuses. She knew. And she stayed. Which means she chose. That's what burned. I remembered the night I came home, 3 years after Trevor fired me. Drunk. Angry. I'd applied to 15 jobs that week, all of them rejected. I'd snapped at her, told her I was a failure, that nothing I did mattered. And she'd hugged me, rubbed my back, whispered, "You didn't deserve what happened to you." What a joke. She knew exactly who did it. And she said nothing. The coffee didn't help. Neither did the silence. My phone buzzed, a message from her. Luke, please come home. We need to talk. I'm so sorry. I deleted it. Not because I didn't want to hear her out, but because I didn't trust what she'd say. Not anymore. That night, I slept in my car. Parked outside the gym I never went to. Seat pushed back, jacket over my chest. I woke up sore, disoriented, and more angry than ever. By morning, I knew I couldn't just bury this. I needed to know more. I needed answers. So I did what any humiliated, bitter son might do. I Googled Trevor Keane. Turns out, he was doing just fine. Still heading the firm. Still giving smug TED Talks on ethical leadership, and employee empowerment. Still smiling that snake oil grin, the same one he wore when he told me to be patient. His bio listed his longtime partner, Teresa, in the final paragraph. There it was, black and white. I clicked on the video link. A panel discussion on leadership, filmed just a few months ago. There he was, on stage, telling a room full of eager young minds how to cultivate talent without ego. I almost put my fist through the screen. Then I froze. Because near the end of the clip, the camera panned to the audience, and I saw her. My mother. Sitting in the front row, hands folded in her lap, smiling. Proud. Like she belonged there. Like she supported him. I shut the laptop with shaking hands. It wasn't just a secret relationship. She endorsed him. She cheered for him while he wore my ruin like a badge of honor. And that's when something inside me broke, not with rage, but with resolve. If she was going to keep secrets, fine. I'd dig up the rest. And I'd start with Trevor. Because if I was going to confront the man who burned my future and wormed his way into my mother's heart, I was going to do it to his face. It took me 3 days to work up the nerve to call him. Not because I was scared, not exactly. But because I didn't know what I wanted more, to punch him or to outgrow him. Revenge or redemption. I wasn't sure which one I needed to finally breathe again. I called the number on his company website. His assistant picked up. I said my name, Luke Ellison, and asked if Mr. Keene was available. There was a pause, long enough for her to maybe Google me, maybe recognize the name from some dusty blacklist. She put me on hold. When he answered, his voice was exactly as I remembered, smooth, confident, that rehearsed warmth that never quite reached his eyes. Luke, he said like we were old colleagues catching up over golf. This is a surprise. You know why I'm calling. I can imagine, he replied, still casual. Let me guess. Teresa. Just like that. No shame. No hesitation. I clenched my jaw. You've been with her for 8 years? Going on 9, he said. And before you ask, yes, she knows everything. And no, she didn't care. The way he said it made my skin crawl. Not just the words. The ease. Why? I asked. You had everything. Power. Money. You didn't need to ruin my career. So why me? He chuckled. Because you were a threat, Luke. That threw me. I don't mean that as an insult, he went on. You were talented, charismatic, and idealistic, which made you dangerous. You actually believed the company should stand for something. That's not how this world works. I was silent. You were too loud, he said. Too principled. Clients loved you. That made you visible. Invisible people either get used or they get cut. There it was. The truth. Ugly. Blunt. Served with a smirk I could practically hear through the phone. You destroyed my life, I said quietly. No, he replied. I taught you how life works. You just refused to learn. I stared at the wall in front of me, rage climbing up my throat like bile. Do you love her? I asked. That caught him off guard. Just for a second. Yes, he said eventually. I do. That hurt more than I expected. Because for all his flaws, for all the lines he'd crossed, there was something raw in his voice. Something that sounded like sincerity. I didn't know what to say, so I hung up. I sat there for a long time after that, the silence in the room thick and suffocating. I wasn't sure who I was angrier at, him, for being exactly the kind of man I thought he was, or her, for falling for it, for staying, for choosing him and pretending it didn't matter. That night, I went home. My mom was in the kitchen again, like nothing had happened, cooking, humming softly, like she hadn't just detonated the last thread between us. She turned when I came in. Her eyes were red, tired. Luke, she started, please. Save it, I said. I talked to him. She froze. He said he loves you. Her mouth twitched. 1,000 emotions crossed her face, shame, sadness, something like hope. He told me I was too loud. I said. Too principled. Said I didn't understand how the world works. Her voice was barely a whisper. I never wanted you to find out like this. But you didn't want me to know at all, I shot back. Right? You just wanted to keep playing both sides. That's not fair. No. I laughed bitterly. Because from where I'm standing, it's the only thing that is fair. She stepped toward me, hands trembling. I was lonely, Luke. You were grown. You moved out. I spent 20 years putting everything into raising you, and when I met him, I felt seen again. I felt wanted. And I didn't. She flinched. I spent years broken, Mom, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And all that time, you were in love with the man who burned me to the ground. Tears welled up in her eyes. I never stopped loving you. Never. But you stopped protecting me. The silence after that was brutal. Crushing. Finally, I stepped back. I'm not going to ask you to leave him. I'm not even going to tell you what to do. She nodded slowly. But don't ask me to be okay with it, I said. Don't ask me to sit at a table with that man and pretend we're family. She opened her mouth, closed it, then just said, I understand. I walked past her, up the stairs, into the room that used to be mine, and I locked the door behind me. Because forgiveness wasn't coming easy this time, and maybe it never would. The next morning, she slipped a note under my door. Not a text, not an email, a handwritten note, like this was still the kind of world where ink meant something. It read, Luke, I know I hurt you. I don't expect you to understand everything right now, but please know this. I never stopped being your mother. I never stopped loving you. Whatever you need, space, time, even distance, I'll give it. But I'll never stop hoping you'll come back. Love, Mom. I read it twice, then a third time. The words weren't dramatic. They weren't even defensive. Just sad. Like she'd already accepted that she'd lost me. And for a minute, I hated how much that hurt. Because I didn't want to hate her. I just wanted the person who used to sit on the edge of my bed and remind me who I was. The woman who used to say, no job defines you. Luke, your integrity does. Now she was with the man who made a living destroying that integrity. I spent that whole day in my old room, surrounded by relics I hadn't looked at in years. Track medals from high school, old notebooks filled with sketches and startup ideas, a dusty laptop I hadn't opened since the crash. And in the bottom drawer of my old dresser, I found something I hadn't even known was missing. The notebook I'd kept after I got fired. The one where I wrote down everything I wanted to say, but never did. Rage, doubt, pain. I flipped through the pages. My own handwriting stared back like a stranger's voice. You are worthless. He saw through you. You failed. Even she stopped believing in you. Even then, some part of me had known she was slipping away. That her silence wasn't neutral, it was a choice. I closed the notebook, and I realized something that made my throat tighten. This wasn't just about Trevor, or her, or even the betrayal itself. It was about the story I'd told myself all these years, that I was the casualty of a corrupt system, that I'd been wronged by a faceless power, and that my mom, at least, was still on my side. But that version, it was over. The truth was Messier. She had chosen love, just not mine. I left that evening. Didn't tell her. Didn't write a note. I just packed a duffel, walked out the door, and drove. I didn't have a destination. I just needed out. I ended up at my friend Nate's place. We hadn't talked in months, but he answered the door like I'd never left. Didn't ask questions. Just handed me a beer and said, you look like hell. Couch is yours. That first night, I didn't sleep. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead, wondering how everything in my life had somehow led me back to a couch with nowhere to go. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it until I saw the name attached to the voicemail that followed. Trevor Keane. He'd left a message. My stomach turned. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. His voice was calm. Too calm. Luke, I know this is difficult, but I think we should talk. Really talk. Not through the past, not through your mother. Man to man. There's something I think you deserve to know. Then a pause. A beat too long. And no, this isn't about apologizing. It's about the truth. I stared at the phone like it had just spit acid. What the hell did he think I deserved to know? What truth hadn't I already been crushed by? I sat there, frozen. And then I called him back. He answered on the first ring. Luke, he said, like we were picking up a conversation from the day before. No tension, no apology. Just that same polished calm, like nothing could touch him. You said there was something I deserved to know, I said flatly. Start talking. He didn't stall. That almost made it worse. It's about your termination, he said. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I clenched my jaw. Oh, that's comforting. I mean it, he continued. I wasn't the one who pushed for it. I laughed, dry and bitter. You signed the paperwork. You made the call. I did, he admitted, but only after it was already in motion. There was a pause. Then he said, it was your mother. My heart stopped. What? I whispered. He repeated it. Calm. Cold. Like he wasn't shattering something sacred. She came to the office. Scheduled a meeting with HR. Told them you were spiraling. That you were struggling with depression. That she was worried you might hurt yourself if the pressure didn't let up. No, I said. That's not possible. She asked us to pull you off the Hastings account. He went on, voice steady. Said it was too much. Said you weren't sleeping. That you hadn't been home in days. I stood up, pacing. You're lying. I thought so too, he said. At first, I thought maybe it was a manipulation tactic, a way to soften you up. But then she cried. Stop, I snapped. Just stop. He kept going. She begged me not to fire you. Said you just needed time. But by then, the partners were already spooked. HR flagged your behavior. They'd been documenting late nights, missed deadlines. You were burning out, Luke, and your mother gave them the final excuse they needed. I felt like the floor was tilting. That's not true, I said again. But my voice was smaller this time. Look, I'm not saying what I did was right, Trevor added. I let you take the fall for something you didn't start. But I didn't start it either. She did. Maybe not out of malice. Maybe she thought she was protecting you. But you should know where the match came from. He didn't wait for a reply. Just ended with, I'm sorry. For all of it. The line went dead. I stood there, frozen, phone still pressed to my ear. Then I dropped it on the couch and sat down like my knees had vanished. My mother. It couldn't be true. She wouldn't. She couldn't. Except. I remembered those months. The way she hovered. The way she'd ask if I was sleeping, eating, breathing. The way she'd tear up at the smallest things, a voicemail, a missed dinner, a silent stare. And suddenly, it made a twisted kind of sense. She had gone to my office once. I remember that now. I was swamped. She dropped off food. Stayed too long. Talked too much. Was that the day? I don't remember what I said to her. I think I told her to leave. Now I was starting to see it all backward, not as a betrayal, but as a fatal mistake. A mother thinking she was saving her son and ending his career instead. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there in stunned silence, watching the light crawl across Nate's floor. And for the first time in years, I realized something terrible. Maybe I was never the victim of a cruel corporate machine. Maybe I was the collateral damage of love. And the only person who could confirm that was her. I didn't call her right away. I couldn't. The weight of what Trevor had said, it sat in my chest like a stone. Heavy, cold, and way too believable. It took me 2 days, 2 nights of no sleep, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from those years I thought I had figured out, trying to imagine her face when she walked into that HR office, what she might have said, what she thought she was saving me from. And then I went home, not to accuse, not to scream, just to ask. When I walked into the house, she was on the couch, reading. She looked up like she wasn't sure if I was real. Her mouth opened, but I held up a hand. Please, I said. Just listen. She nodded, silent, eyes brimming, but she didn't look away. I sat down across from her, and for the first time in my life, I asked the question I never knew I needed to ask. Did you go to my office? Did you talk to HR about me? She didn't blink, didn't pretend she didn't understand, didn't lie. She just nodded. Yes. My chest tightened. I felt like I was bracing for a car crash. Why? Her hands trembled as she set the book down. Because I thought I was losing you. She paused. Her voice cracked. You weren't sleeping. You weren't eating. I'd come into your room and just stand there, listening to make sure you were breathing. You barely spoke to me. You wouldn't look me in the eye. You were disappearing in front of me, and I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't breathe. So you what? I asked. You thought getting me fired would save me? I never wanted you fired, she said, eyes wide. I just wanted them to ease the pressure, to take you off that project. I thought if they saw how much it was breaking you, maybe they'd back off, give you a chance to breathe. That's all I wanted. And when they didn't, I begged them, she whispered. I sat there in that room and begged them not to let you go. But I'd already said too much. They'd made up their minds. I looked down at my hands. They felt like they weren't part of me. You let me come home, I said. You watched me fall apart. You let me believe it was his fault. Tears streamed down her face. Because it was, she said. He could have fought for you. He could have told them to back off. But he didn't. He let them fire you to protect his own image. I never forgave him for that. I almost left him over it. But you didn't. She shook her head. No, she said softly. Because he told me the truth, Luke. And as much as I hated it, he reminded me that I started the fire. He just refused to put it out. I stood up, pacing. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I asked. I thought I was sabotaged, that I was targeted because I spoke up. I carried that rage for years. I built my identity around being betrayed. And the whole time, it was you. She stood too, tentative, fragile. It wasn't meant to be betrayal, she said. It was meant to be love. That's the thing, I said, my voice shaking. You thought they were the same. Silence. Then she asked, if you could go back and see yourself the way I saw you back then, wouldn't you have done the same? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. She stepped forward. I was wrong, she said. Not for caring, not for trying, but for thinking I knew what was best without asking you first. I took your power away, and I can't fix that, but I will never lie to you again. I looked at her then, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't see my mother as the traitor. I saw her as a woman who made a terrible choice in a moment of fear. And for the first time in years, I saw myself as someone who maybe wasn't broken after all. Just human, just wounded, and maybe finally ready to heal. We sat in silence for a long time. Not the kind that's tense or loaded or waiting to explode, but the kind that feels like a field after a storm. Everything soaked, muddy, but calm. Still, she poured 2 cups of tea without asking, just like she used to when I was a kid and didn't have the words for what was wrong. I didn't stop her. Do you hate me? She asked quietly. I looked up, and I meant it when I said, no. She nodded, bit her lip, didn't look convinced. I hated you, I said softly. For about 2 days. For what I thought you did. For who you were with. But now, I don't think I ever did. Her eyes flicked to mine, surprised. What I hated, I continued, was the story I told myself to survive. That you were the last good person I had. That you were the one who never let me down. And then I realized that story wasn't real. You're not perfect. You never were. You're just a person. She laughed once sharp and sad. I've always been just a person. Look, you were just too hurt to see it. I nodded. Yeah, and maybe I needed the villain more than I needed the truth. The tea was cold before either of us touched it. That night, I didn't leave. I didn't sleep much either, but I stayed. We didn't talk more. We didn't try to repair everything in one breath. We just existed, in the same space. And for once, that was enough. A week later, I got a call. It was from an old friend, Andrea. She used to be in my team at Trevor's firm, back when I still believed in office camaraderie. She'd heard I was back in town, asked if I'd be open to coffee. I almost said no. Then I remembered something my mom had said during our talk, something quiet, almost missed. You stopped living long before you got fired, Luke. So I said yes. We met at a tiny spot downtown, the kind with chipped mugs and vinyl booths that have seen too many breakups and job interviews. Andrea looked the same as sharp, tired, kind. You look better, she said. Not good, but better. I smirked. I'll take it. We talked for an hour. Caught up. She told me she'd left the firm too, right after me. Said she couldn't stomach what they did. Said a lot of people didn't know the truth, but the ones who did, they remembered. Then she dropped something I didn't see coming. There's a startup I'm helping build, she said. Ethical consulting. Real work. Real value. We're tiny, but we're growing. And we need someone who gets the trenches. Someone who's not afraid to tell the truth, even when it's ugly. I blinked. You're offering me a job? She smiled. I'm offering you a chance to build something better. I didn't give an answer right away. I told her I'd think about it. But that night, walking back home, home, something in me clicked. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Just clarity. I'd spent years letting pain shape my life. Letting one moment define me. One betrayal freeze me in place. But maybe it didn't have to. Maybe I could build again. Different. Not because I'd forgotten what happened, but because I'd finally seen it for what it really was. A mother trying to save her son. A man saving his reputation. And me, caught in the middle, trying to find myself again. I walked into the kitchen. She was there, reading again. I think I'm going to take that job, I said. She looked up, smiled. Good, she said. It's time. And for once, I believed it. The first day back in an office felt like putting on clothes that used to fit, familiar but strange. A little stiff in the shoulders, a little tight at the chest. But it was mine. Andrea met me at the door, handed me a coffee like we'd never skipped a beat. Conference rooms this way, she said. We're still small for full-time, 3 interns, and me pretending I know what I'm doing. I smiled. It wasn't a corporate smile. It wasn't armor. It was real. The startup space was raw. Unfinished drywall. Desks made from doors on sawhorses. A whiteboard so cluttered it looked like a conspiracy map. But there was life here. Energy. Honesty. People who gave a damn. They introduced me as our new lead strategist. No titles. No buzzwords. Just trust. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to speak. After work, Andrea caught me by the elevator. "By the way," she said, "Trevor knows you're here." I didn't flinch. "Of course he does. He sent a message through a mutual, said, and I quote, 'Tell Luke I'm glad he landed somewhere soft.'" I laughed. "Soft?" Andrea shrugged. "I think he expected you to fold. Crawl back. Disappear." "Yeah," I said. "He always did underestimate me." I left the office that night feeling taller. Not because I had power, but because I didn't need it anymore. The revenge fantasy had died somewhere between that phone call and the look in my mother's eyes. What I wanted now was peace. Something he could never give me. Something he'd never understand. When I got home, Mom was waiting with 2 bowls of pasta and a half-burnt loaf of garlic bread. "You cooked?" I teased. "I attempted," she said. "Don't judge me. I've been stressed." I sat down, took a bite, winced. "Okay, judge me a little," she said, and we both laughed, not because everything was fixed, but because we could. Over dinner, she pulled out a small box. Wooden. Smooth edges. Something I hadn't seen in years. "This was your father's," she said, pushing it toward me. "I found it when I was cleaning the attic. I think it's time you have it." I hesitated. "I thought you hated him." "I did," she said, "but not always. And not everything he left behind was broken." I opened the box. Inside were old photographs. A watch. A letter, yellowed with time. "For Luke, when you're ready." I didn't read it then. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I felt something shift in me again. Another door, long buried, creaking open. That night, I sat on the balcony with my tea, watching the city lights flicker like distant promises. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where this new job would take me. I didn't know what I'd find in that letter, or how long it would take to rebuild what broke between me and my mother. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the questions. Because I finally understood, the worst betrayals don't destroy you. They reveal you. And what I saw, looking back at my reflection in the glass that night, was someone worth becoming. A month passed. The job settled into something real. Meetings. Deadlines. Clients who didn't want to be impressed, just heard. And I gave them that. Not flash. Not jargon. Just the truth, served straight, no garnish. And they listened. Funny how that worked. Mom and I found our rhythm again. It wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Some dinners quiet. But it was honest now. That mattered more than comfort ever did. She asked questions instead of assuming. I answered instead of hiding. We became people to each other, not just roles. Not just wounds. And then one evening, I opened the letter. The one my father had left me. The man I'd spent years pretending didn't matter. "Look. If you're reading this, I probably wasn't the father I should have been. That's on me. But there are things I want you to know, not because they'll fix anything, but because you deserve the truth. I left because I was scared. Not of you. Of myself. Of failing you the way my father failed me. So I ran. Like a coward. And for that, I'm sorry. Your mother raised you better than I ever could have. She gave you all the good I never had. And if you're half the man I imagined, then she succeeded. Don't let my mistakes define you. Don't carry what isn't yours. Love anyway. Even when it's messy. Especially when it hurts. Be brave enough to build. To forgive. To live. And if you ever wonder if I was proud of you, the answer is yes. Always. Dad. I didn't cry. I just sat there, holding the letter, the last echoes of a man I never got to know settling into my bones. And I thought about everything. Trevor. My mother. The job I lost. The one I found. The people who hurt me. The people who tried to save me. The ways they sometimes overlapped. And I thought about that boy I used to be, angry, proud, certain the world owed him something. He was gone now. What was left was quieter, stronger, and still standing. I folded the letter, tucked it back in the box. Not to forget, but to remember, the right way this time. That night, I stood on the same balcony, staring at the same lights. Except now, I wasn't watching. I was planning. Because the past may have shaped me, but it would never again define me. And for the first time in my life, I was done waiting for permission to begin again.